薄いのアホ。
プリズムとメイクアップカードレディー。
Welcome to Shojo Tell, where we discuss shoujo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today, March 9th, 2024, we'll be shoujo and telling about the series Neon Genesis Evangelion, Angelic Days by Fumino Hayashi. I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined by one of my friends from high school, who I believe I've referred to on this podcast before as my Cyborg 009 buddy, Joshua McHugh. Hello, Josh.
Hello, Ashley. It's good to be here.
Hello, Cyborg 009 buddy.
Woo! And it's nice that I get to talk about an anime that is the basis of one of my dear friends from high school with another dear friend from high school whose friendship started over an anime. So, hey, it all comes full circle.
Hey, anime, it brings us all together. That's what's up.
Oh, yeah. God, Cyborg 009 is great.
Oh, we love it. We love it. We're halfway through. We're going to get there. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Joshua, is there anything else that people should know about you aside from you're my high school friend and you love Evangelion a lot?
Well, first of all, it's pronounced Evangelion.
Okay.
So
I booted off my own podcast.
Yeah, there you go. Hi, I'm your host of Shojo Tell. I've never read a shoujo manga before this. That is so your intro is a bed of lies, or your show description is a bed of lies, because I am not a rotating shoujo superfan.
You are a special case who I was like, okay, here's what happened. Normally, when I have to do out of print manga, I just don't try very hard to find somebody to guest for it. I just make Asher do it. But then it was, how am I supposed to say it? Evangelion. Okay, Evangelion. When it was Evangelion, and we accidentally got 2 copies of it. Truly, this was not expected. I was like, who needs to be on this? Joshua. Joshua needs to come.
Absolutely. Well, no, it was funny because you told me about it, and I have been peripherally aware of this manga for as long as I've been into Evangelion. Yeah. But it doesn't occupy a lot of my brain space. So when you said Shojo Evangelion, I didn't put the dots together till you handed me the books and was like, oh, it's this one. Okay, I'm so ready for this.
You're so ready. You're so hype. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. Well, so let's get into it. So this beginning section will be spoiler free. We'll make only high level observations, and I will give the spoiler warning. So it'll probably be, I don't know, 10 to 20 minutes of spoiler-free discussion about this severely out-of-print manga. Okay. And to be clear, since I've done I'm calling this my unofficial, 90s anime to manga trilogy. I've done the shonen manga adaptation of The Vision of Escaflowne, and there's 2 shoujo manga adaptations of Cowboy Bebop. We have done both of those, so this is completing this. And so this one actually is a shoujo. It ran in Asuka magazine from 2003 to 2005.
There you go.
So we're not breaking the rules of my own podcast like we do sometimes. At least in that regard. Okay. So Joshua, what is Angelic Days about?
So Neon Genesis Evangelion, Angelic Days, follows the main cast of characters of the original anime in an alternate universe setting based on the video game Girlfriends of Steel 2nd, which was for the PlayStation 2. That is in turn inspired by the Instrumentality sequence from the ending of the original anime television show. It features the characters that we've all gotten to know and love in their day-to-day lives against the backdrop of life in a Tokyo 3 where the second impact never occurred. But NERV and its quest to protect the world against the angels using the power of the artificial human Evangelion still exists. But if you were expecting high-octane cyborg cyborg mecha cerebral mind screw akin to the original, you'll want to temper your expectations somewhat. Instead, this focuses on the more realistic stresses of our 14-year-old protagonist, the timid and easily pushed around Shinji Ikari and his friends as they deal with the same emotions we all went through when we were in middle school, with a sumptuous serving of anxiety about change and growing up and growing apart. That's not to say the supernatural intrigue takes a complete backseat to the more grounded reality of teenage life. Shinji has visions of the first angel, Adam, who does appear to the people of Tokyo 3. Something is different about this Kaoru character, a friend of Shinji's and the rest of the gang. And just like in the anime, the kids of Class 2A are eligible pilots against the coming angel threat. But who has time for that when your love life's on the line?
I mean, yeah, this is a romance. This is shoujo manga. We got to focus on the romance. Forget about Shinji getting in the robot. I was actually, okay, to be honest, I thought there were not going to be robots. They do actually fight in the robots twice. I was like, oh, I did not know.
They do.
I also really love that this is the adaptation of a video game that's an AU of the anime. There's a lot of layers here. It's too far for me.
It's deep.
We're in so deep. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Okay, so to make our expertise known about Evangelion, if it's not already apparent, like I like to go over what people's level of familiarity with the series is. Usually I am the noob. Sometimes that's not true. In this case, I would say I am not the expert here for sure. I watched the anime once, literally 15 years ago, I'm pretty sure. I watched at least one of the Rebuild movies, possibly the second one. I don't even remember if I got to the second one. And I also had never read this manga until now.
Yeah, my bona fides here is this was literally the first anime I ever watched that wasn't Pokemon, and I do not count the 4Kids Pokemon as anime, frankly.
I agree.
It's my absolute favorite anime. I wouldn't say I'm an expert because it's hard to be an expert on something this cerebral, but I like to think I know a lot about it. Kind of like I mentioned, one of my closest friends and I bonded over our mutual love of this series. Shout out Derek, who I'm sure will be listening to this when it comes out. I've only read a couple volumes or a few volumes of the original manga, which actually that's a misnomer. It was an anime first. This is like one of those rare instances that I've come across where the anime actually came first. And the 3 volumes I've read are not like sequential. I do want to read the full thing at some point. I thought the Rebuild movies were super disappointing. They had a great start. If you've only watched the first one, you don't need to watch the rest. Just finish up the series. I thought the second one was still pretty good, and it just got. I felt like I was being gaslit watching that. It was real. I did not enjoy the fourth one at all. That's the short version. That can be a podcast episode.
That's a different podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I'd also never read the series until now, though. Like I said, I was peripherally aware of it. And when you showed it to me, I felt like I got struck by lightning in my spine.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my God, here we go.
Here we go. I was like, I've got to give Joshua everything he ever wanted, all of the Ava lore ever. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, Ava is up there in my top 2. The other one being Serial Experiments Lane, which is another very cerebral anime. So clearly I have a type.
You do have a type. And I would also say, I feel like you don't keep up with contemporary anime, right?
No, I've really not. The most recent series I've deliberately sat down and watched was Soul Eater. And the funny thing about that was I caught an episode of it way early in the morning on on Adult Swim, and was like, oh, this is kind of neat. Like, let me sit down and watch the show. And I watched it, and I was generally liking it. Not the most amazing thing I've ever watched, but I thought it was an enjoyable go through. I thought it was very, very distinct and fun style, good premise. And I kept wondering, when is this episode coming up that I saw already? And then I realized it was the final episode of the series.
And you were like, damn, it was so good. Yeah.
Anime and mangas are not things that I have deliberately kept up with. I know what I like, and I just rewatch what I like a lot. Actually, no, that's not true. That was a complete lie, because you were showing me what's the one on Netflix? Oh my god, why am I forgetting the name of it?
Neo-Yokio? Does that count?
Neo-Yokio. If that counts, that's the most recent anime I've watched.
I've tortured Joshua with the greatest anime of all time, Neo-Yokio.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Incredible. The Christmas movie
so
is the
yeah.
best.
Yeah, so no, that's absolutely correct. I've not really kept up with anime. It's not that I have any dislike for it. It's just one of those things that once you stop, it's really hard to get back on the train.
I mean, yeah, I also understand they don't make all these beautiful cell animated depressing things like they used to for you. They just don't do it. Okay.
You did show me Your Name recently, though, and
I
really
I'm slowly making
that.
Josh watch more anime.
That's not the worst thing that could
but
happen.
Mostly we're just rewatching CYBORG 009.
Yeah, pretty much.
We'll just get through all the iterations of 009 and then be like, I guess we have to go back to the beginning. I don't know.
Oh, I have copies of the older series, the far more racist ones that I cannot wait to.
There's also all the new ones, all the like crappy new ones that we have to look forward to.
I wonder why I haven't watched those.
I don't know why you haven't watched those, because I have.
Actually, I remember watching the one movie that came out like Re-009 or something, and that's one of those movies where the image on the tin is far better than the actual plot of the story. Holy
delete.
Yeah, I don't need to see that again. I was very upset by how that ended up.
Okay, fine. All right. To get back to our Shojo Eva here.
Yes, there we go.
Big Eva fan Josh here. Did you like Shojo AU Eva here?
It grew on me.
Ooh.
I thought it stuck the landing better than the takeoff, but I was ultimately pretty disappointed with it. Yeah, I don't know if I wrote in my notes that I described it at one point as a love hypercube. And I don't know if this is for me. I also thought the plot had a lot of lost potential. And this may be more of a reflection on how I consume media lately, where and a lot of my observances really of more contemporary shows where they have too much story for the amount of runtime they're giving. And
yeah.
Then so there just ends up being a lot of really cool ideas that don't get the treatment they deserve. So the whole subplot with Nerve and the Angels, I felt was completely superfluous. I didn't there were a couple takeaways from that I thought were interesting. Anything that had to do with Adam, because that was more in line with the idea of this AU sort of being in the zone of instrumentality in the last episode, and of characters getting to choose the world that they live in. It happens. Well, we can talk about that more later, but everything else was just like, why is this here? It's just muddying up the plot. And also, and this might be me not being a teenager anymore. Author man, Mr. Author, like, these are 14-year-old girls you're talking about. Like, why do you keep bringing up drawing their breasts? That's super uncomfortable.
I know, there was that one author
is all shoujo this horny? Like, it started out like, and it mellowed out. It wasn't the whole way through, to be clear, but like, yeah. I was. It made me very uncomfortable to read.
Okay, I feel like it's normally not that the girls get big boobs, right? Like, it's not normally that way because it's supposed to be for girls, so it's gonna be like, sure, Kaworu's the hot one, right? Like, right, so right. He gets hyped up for being the hot one. That all makes sense, but yeah, the big boobs thing is, I feel normally a shonen
That was
manga
the thing. I was like, speaking about Soul Eater, like, because I didn't know anything about the manga, I bought like the first 2 volumes of it, and I was like, oh, this is definitely for teenage boys. Yeah, and
it's worse,
oh my god. And so it wasn't that bad, but it was just like, is this what I'm getting myself in? Gosh, yeah, no. I was like, what am I doing? What have I gotten myself into?
What am I doing? You're like, this is inappropriate. I'm sexually harassing like 14-year-old girls. It's not right.
Yeah.
It's not right. They're not real. It's okay.
They're not real.
They're not real.
And yeah.
Ray is not a real Genki girl. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
I think overall I agree with your assessment of like the plot. But like I just said, I was like, I thought there weren't gonna be robots, and there were, and I was like, did there need to be? Like I didn't. It broke Shinji for 5 pages, and then it was like, yeah, we got over it. And I was like, okay,
right. And it doesn't give it the space it needs to be a relevant plot point, and like aspects of it come back at the very end that I do think do a better job, which again we'll talk about later, but. Yeah, overall, you could have written the same scenes different ways without involving Nerve and the angels. And it, like, honestly, with the idea of Shinji going through instrumentality in the anime, I thought that was part of it. It's like, here are all these characters who exist in just the regular world, and the angels don't exist, and Nerve doesn't exist, and Shinji doesn't have to have abandonment issues, and they can just live like real kids. And you do get to see that in this. And also there's some supernatural elements which are handled better and worse at certain points in the series.
Yeah. I actually really I believe that I enjoyed this manga. I'm not like, it's not like my favorite shoujo manga ever or my favorite manga ever, but I was like, that's pretty good. And I do like these kinds of stories where it's like all these supernatural things are happening, but you focus on like the regular people, right? Like there's a book by Patrick Ness that's called The Rest of Us Just Live Here, which is about like a world that's populated by superheroes who are always getting into battles and like dying, and everybody else is just like a depressive teenager, you know, like living on the planet being like, these guys are like, I love deconstructions like that, and I actually usually hate superhero things. It's one of the things that disappoints me about My Hero Academia. I was like, don't be a coward and give that main character a superpower. make him have hero worship that he has to like suffer and figure out without getting a superpower.
Right.
So like I kind of like appreciated that, but then because it's like, well, this is Ava and you can't have Ava without the Ava. Like, oh, we need to put a battle in here.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'm notoriously good at complaining. I didn't hate this, like, just to be clear. I wish there was more. Like, so many parts ended up feeling vestigial and not thought out, like I said before. But I do think that they did a good job of capturing the essence of teenage anxiety and about friendships and relationships well. And honestly, it took me back to times in my middle school and high school years with some nostalgic melancholy of dealing with those same emotions that, like, there's a weird comfort to thinking about it now being a decade and a half to 2 decades removed from that.
Now that we're old.
Of like, I'm objectively in a better spot than anywhere I wished I was back then. But there is something kind of like, you know, nostalgic about seeing characters go through those feelings. Because it kind of reminds you about when you went through it. I think that's why a movie like Your Name hits so well, is despite the supernatural element of it, I think most of us can relate to like a lot of the feelings going on there.
Yeah, there was a spoiler scene at the end of this where I was like, I actually got Your Name vibes from what happened in this manga.
Yeah, no, I really was thinking about it.
Yeah,
as well.
So yeah, but I agree that it's like okay, so I feel like this isn't a spoiler, but maybe it's like actually the main story of this. There's 6 volumes, but the main story ends after volume 4, and you're like, okay, what are these other 2 volumes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's just like short stories basically after that, and you're like, okay, slice of life vignettes.
And I think that those did a good. I actually rather liked those sections for the most part. Volume 5 less than volume 6, though I like what they tried to do in the 5th volume. Again, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I was like, I think we have differing opinions on that, but all right. Well, I think that's it for our spoiler-free discussion because we have so many things to get to. Okay.
Oh my god.
So again, Angelic Days was published in English by ADV Manga, which means it is super out of print because when's the last time that ADV Manga existed? Well, you can, obviously, I accidentally bought a copy for myself and my brother-in-law had also got me a copy. So it's like you can get it. You might not want to pay the prices that it's available for, but you can get it. If you are curious to flesh out more of your Eva knowledge. All right, let's spoil all of the things now. All right, so we'll start with our usual character walkthrough, which I think is actually really fitting for this manga because unlike the original Eva, which is I think a lot more about like the machinations of the plot and deep, dark, edgy themes and stuff, this one is like no. What if we focus the characters and their big feelings that have to live inside their tiny teenage bodies, and like that's the main focus of it. So we'll try to go relatively in order of significance, I guess, or whatever. So obviously Shinji getting the robot.
Oh yes. I found him to be not far off baseline.
Right?
He was way less depressed, which honestly was one of the aspects I did like about the rebuild movies is Shinji seemed happier in them. Still dealing with a lot of the same parental abandonment and resentment issues, but generally seemed to have to be healthier and a little more sure of himself. I think that's a similar way to how he was written in the manga as well. And definitely is how the manga, as in the manga of the original anime, and is definitely true here. He does, suffer from parental abandonment and resentment issues towards his father, especially about how his father treats his mother. But he has a healthier relationship to everybody else. Except for possibly Asuka, but we'll get there. They definitely kept his quality of getting caught up in the whirlwind of life with no real agency on what's happening to him, and at least until closer to the end, where he gets to, in true instrumentality fashion, make that decision himself. Just this time it's emotions instead of self-worth issue, which talk about teenage years. As someone who is uncomfortable with change and often misses how things were, I could relate to this Shinji a lot, which was an interesting thing to discover.
You were like, no, I don't want to relate to Shinji.
No, it's just like, I don't know, when you're in your 30s and you're reading a story about a teenager, sometimes you don't expect to be like, oh, it me.
Yeah. I think I'm only starting to reach that point since I do read a lot of YA and shoujo manga still and stuff. And I'm just like, at what point do I become too old for this? I'm not there yet.
One of my favorite little XKCD comics, there's a quote from it, was one of the characters fills their apartment with ball pit balls. Oh. And when asked why they did it, they go, because we're adults now and we get to choose what that means.
Yes.
And so, hey, you put that feather in your cap.
Do whatever I want. That's right. Yeah. Why do I make money if not to buy the silly things that I want? The Eva manga for slightly more than cover price. Come on now.
Yeah, honestly, we're here for a good time, not a long time.
Yes.
So.
Hey. Yeah. This Shinji, well, reading it, you know, again, I've only watched the anime once, so I was like, he does feel pretty similar to original Shinji to me. But yeah, it is all really in the, like, when he is presented with a issue which he cannot solve because he is still like a schmucky schmuck, right? he can't work his way out of the system like that,
right?
But he just does more accept whatever's happening and tries to look at the positive side of it. Like, he's like, I don't know, early on Asuka burns him with soup because she's mad about something while they're in home ec. And so she's like flipping out and spills the soup and it hits Shinji and he gets burned. Very funny on the R Evangelion subreddit thread that I was reading. Somebody was like, that scene was so impactful for me. I think it's really like heartfelt and heartwarming. I was like, what? Okay. Because then Shinji has a nice soft moment where he's like, oh, Asuka, are you okay? Are you burned? And she's like, oh, look at him caring about me and everything. And it's like, okay, but can we talk about the abusiveness of that relationship? Let's segue into that. Asuka.
Asuka. At least in the show, you get to understand more clearly why Asuka is how she is, with her assertiveness, and how her self-worth and her personality is tied to piloting Eva, and like also like surrounding, you know, her mother's suicide. This version of the character has none of that. She was just mean. And I've never been a huge Asuka fan, but as the series goes on, you learn more about your characters and you start to understand, like, hey, everybody in this show is like super traumatized, and it absolutely informs why they act the way they do. Makes the End of Evangelion movie really makes you feel for Asuka. This doesn't. This is just Asuka is mean, and also just feels emotionally manipulative. And I think that goes back to what I was saying before, where I feel like the author needed more runtime, because, you know, doing some side research on this, like, Asuka's much like Shinji, dealing with the fact that her parents are not around much, and that can absolutely have a negative impact on a kid's personality. But they didn't show that. They just made Asuka mean, and mean to everybody, basically. With the exception of how she warms up to Rei. Which I actually liked, that that Rei and Asuka were not just enemies, like opponents. They actually became friends, and I do appreciate that. Again, there's a lot of really good ideas sprinkled throughout this, but the execution isn't always there, and I didn't think it was there with Asuka at all.
Yeah, Asuka was really difficult for me. Okay, so I think there's like twofold here. In the beginning, I was definitely just like, Asuka's very, very grating and mean and terrible. But I think I also like relate the most to Asuka, because I feel like I was this way in high school, just like unnecessarily mean and angry about everything and unable to explain feelings, right? And so like only by volume, maybe late in 2 or 3, when, you know, people keep being like, oh, we love Asuka, and then they have to actually explain why they could possibly like Asuka, right? And they're like, well, Asuka has a really strong sense of justice, like, but what is right and what is wrong, right?
Right.
And I was like, I understand Asuka, but I do think that reading her is really, really grating in this case, at least. And also, like, the weight, like in a series where the weight is supposed to be more on the everyday interactions instead of the, you know, angels attacking and all these God thing, Christianity happening, right? Like, I think that it was not discussed enough how it's like, this is also abusive behavior.
It also takes out one of the core concepts of the original anime, where it inside, with the exception of Unit 0, inside of all of the Evas are like the souls of the mothers of the pilots, and that's what enables them to pilot the Eva. And that does not happen in this one, as far as I can tell, because everybody's mom is alive.
Yeah. Which, like, good for them. But yeah, I was actually, I think that ties into what I was trying to think of how to say, which is that, like, I don't think this manga does a great job of squaring the circle of its theme of, like, adulthood and, like, being scary, or these parents being terrible to their kids, and, like, the cyclic nature that brings around. Like, I don't think it quite sticks that entire theme to explain why Asuka is that way, which ties back to what you were saying too. So it's just like, it feels incomplete in a lot of ways. But it is, as you said, sweet, her relationship with Rei, and, like, I guess a bit of a subversion of the red Oni, blue Oni dynamic that they have going on.
Right.
But also, Rei is the most different. So please tell us about Rei.
Speaking about Rei, the Nerve plotline does not do her any favors. And this is, like, one of the big reasons why I think the whole thing should have been nixed. Like, having Rei as personality opposite as she was in the show, honestly should have been enough for, like, she's a transfer student. Nobody knows her. And she's really, like, approaching manic pixie dream girl. And then, like, that should have been, like, you work with that. And then to add in I was born in a lab, but not the same way as I was in the show. I had parents actually this time, but I never met them. And all the adults were super nice, but above, like,
they had to jump through a lot of hoops to make any sense.
Yeah, and they didn't need to. The one thing that I really liked is Rei and Kaoru had this game-recognized game moment that they had in the anime, because in the anime they were both at least partially angels.
Right.
Like, I think Kaoru was the final angel, and Rei was born of Lilith, who was the second angel. So there was this game-recognized game that happened that I kind of wish they got more into, but I also like that they left that open-ended. And you have this scene between Rei and Kaoru where they're talking about, like, whether existence should move forward versus staying the same. And I liked that. And it's just, I'm not going to say nothing came of it, because like clearly there's large components to that throughout the anime, or throughout Angelic Days. And the one part of the Evangelion, like, Angels plotline that I really liked was Adam as the instrumentality, the driver of instrumentality, like Adam and Kaoru, and both with Gendo, who we'll talk about later, and with Shinji being like, what do you want in this world? Like, you have the power to make the world what it is you want, and not telling them what they should do, but helping them realize their decisions, which is sort of what the original version of instrumentality in the anime was, is Shinji deciding, like, to exist and not to just to fade away. I think that got captured very well, and I just wish there was more of it. That was like the only set, and I know I kind of went into my Kaoru discussion as part of this, but to wrap up with Rei,
that's fine.
That those hints were the parts that I really liked the most, and along the lines of her comments about regret, speaking with Asuka about how it's more painful to regret telling someone something than it is to wish you hadn't, or what was it? What's the line? The other way around. Yeah.
I think it was the other way around. She told her, because she was like, it's way more painful to, like, die regretting that I didn't tell you than to.
You did. And that is something that, as I'll talk a little bit about later, that hits very home to me, which was one of the things I really liked about this. Those were, I think, Rei's strongest parts. And then the rest of the time she was just kind of there and weird.
She was weird, yeah. I can't believe the manga ends on just a short story about Asuka like teaching Rei math.
That was funny.
Like, okay, this is a weird place to end.
Yeah.
Fiend. You know, it's like, okay, thank you. I agree though that I really liked Rei and Kaoru having their little spat about like moving forward or choosing stasis. I was like, that's good stuff for sure. Yeah, I just couldn't believe that they tried so hard to hang on, as you said, to all the elements of what made Rei like in the original, but then totally just had her personality do a total 180. And I was like, okay. Because the way that Rei is in the original is like totally its own character type that many people love. So I was like, why do we make her a totally different
what
thing?
if Rei was more kind of like Asuka, maybe kind of sort of? And I'm like, no, the whole that's the whole like that's the whole point, is they're very different from each other.
It was weird, but then we have our
looking
gay
over my notes, I spelled his name so many times, and I don't think I once spelled it correctly. I just didn't want to. I didn't at that point. I was like, I'm too invested, and I'm not going to go back and look. But I don't think I spelled his name right at all. Yeah. Definitely read him as gay coded, like he was in the anime, and I started off.
So gay.
Okay, not coded, very explicitly gay, like he was in the anime.
I'm pretty sure he was just straight up gay.
He was gay coded in this, because I don't think they really explicitly talked about. They didn't explicitly show it like they did in the anime. I think that's why I chose that term.
He comes on so strong. So
I got very uncomfortable at the beginning of his introduction, because I was like, this is early 2000s. They're going to make him the butt of jokes. And that makes me very uncomfortable in the space year 2024. And I'm glad that they didn't. That it just kind of smoothed out as things went on.
Yeah.
The overall portrayal, you see, I wrote down here, it didn't work for me as well as it did in the anime. But I don't know that that's actually true the more I think about it. Shinji and Kaoru didn't have the connection that they had in the anime. Kaoru was much more in Angelic Days, much more into Shinji than I think the other way around.
Oh, yeah.
And
100%.
I don't know. That was kind of a bummer, because like the easy ship in the original anime was, for me, was Shinji and Rei. But in the original, the more courageous one was Shinji and Kaoru, because Kaoru was the only one who really seemed to, I'd say Rei did too before she died at one point, but was the only one who really seemed to love Shinji for who he was. And and Shinji like recognizes that and feels like a huge connection to that. I think that was actually one of the big complaints about the Netflix version, the Netflix dub for Evangelion, was they changed my understanding as white bread McGee, who does not know anything about Japan, was the literal translation of what Kaoru says to Shinji, or the other way around, I don't remember, is "I like you." But the specific word that gets used is much more akin to love. And they whiffed that. Apparently, I've not seen it in the Netflix.
Yeah, I remember this big kerfuffle
over
they made it less gay.
And
how dare you, Netflix? How dare.
I liked Kaoru in this. I liked how he gets used as a kind of like a static point in time. You used the word static earlier, and I think that's really fitting, and is part of the supernatural element of the series of Angelic Days that I wish they would have run more with, in to the exclusion of the, well, we have to put the fighting robots in it because it's the Evangelion plotline. I really liked how both with Shinji and with Gendo, he lays out the choice of, is this the world you want? It's it is Kaoru and Adam are the instrumentality that both Gendo and Shinji have to reckon with and decide what is the world that they want to live in, what is the world that they want to save. And I liked how Kaoru was used in this. Yeah, I liked Kaoru.
Yeah, he was fun. Yeah, he was good. I thought he was good. He definitely. I do know what you mean about like being scared that he'll be the butt of joke, because I feel like in the very beginning he was. It wasn't like they were blatantly making fun of him, but it was definitely like, isn't his deep love of Shinji
literally
so
the first, again, like going to my volume 1 notes, right? What I wrote is Kaoru is definitely as gay as he was in the anime, but I'm very not comfortable with the language directed at him about being, quote, weird. I was like, I don't know, bud.
Yeah, exactly. Volume 1 also used the R word at some point, so it was like volume 1 was definitely...
That is my second note, actually. She says the R word, but like, I don't know what the original Japanese was, but every time I hear the word, the phrase "antabaka" in the anime, it gets translated to "What are you, stupid?" So I'm wondering, again, is this a difference between what baka means in what was baka the word that was used in the Japanese version of Angelic Days? Is that really what it translates to in English? Most, I was curious about that, but I'm also like, it's early 2000s. That was still in vogue.
I was like, in the 2000s, we were silly. We made mistakes. Yeah. Mistakes were made. So now they're here for all time. Yeah. Thanks, mistakes. Yeah, I think it's funny because I was actually talking to Asher about, I was like, Asher, you've seen Ava, right? Like, do you remember more about what happened in it than I do? And he was like, well, Kaoru is an angel. And I was like, right, that makes everything about him make way more sense in Angelic Days. But Angelic Days just doesn't say anything about that. Right. It's just is like,
they imply it. They make the implications about it, but they don't really run with it, which can be a good thing. Not everything needs to be explained. Honestly, that's why people love Evangelion so much, because it doesn't explain anything.
It just keeps going.
It just keeps going. But there wasn't enough runtime. I'm going to keep coming back to this complaint because I think it's as somebody who does not write stories myself, I feel qualified in saying that I think it's one of the things that will throw me out of storytelling in general is when I'm like that, like you're making a mess on the page because you have all these ideas and you're just vomiting it out. Like, slow the hell down and tell a story and finish that story. And I think the author spread himself too thin on this.
Yeah. Again, I really think the strongest point was that confrontation with Ray, because I really liked when Ray pushed back on him and was like, "This is about the world that you want it, the way you want it to be." Yeah, and Kaoru was like, "Whoa, what? Wait, I'm just the mechanism to make the things happen, not a thing that can have desires." Right? Is what it felt like. And in my mind, I was just making jokes. I was like, "Yeah, he wants it to be gay AF, yo, what's up? Let's go." What is up? Let's go. No, okay. Yeah. So I think that's like our real main cast is those four, right? And then everybody else is kind of a weird side character. They tried to make these next 2 to 3 also really main characters, and I don't know how well it worked. So start off with Toji,
and by extension Hikari. Easily my favorite interactions. Honestly, like easily the best. They were the two that felt the most real. Two people who clearly wanted each other, but were too embarrassed to admit it to their friends. Because they're teenagers and everything is so I work in a I work in a middle school.
That's true. You work with
I work in a middle school. I provide IT support for a middle school, and early on when I was working there, I overheard one kid ask another, "Yo, why did you break up with your girlfriend?" And the other kid said, "I don't know, I'm 12." And I'm like, yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Very, very astute observation for somebody who does not have a prefrontal cortex. That's great. So I honestly like that felt the most real.
Like when Toji was doing his thing where he didn't want to eat the lunch that she had made in front of friends, like that was very real to you.
Yeah. I've always liked the Toji and Hikari pairing in the original anime. I think it got the best treatment here. I really liked those two.
They were very cute. And I loved Toji's, I'm the tough guy, but he immediately starts crying as soon as anything gets hard. I was like, there, Toji. I think that the worst part about Toji, and it's not his fault, is just that his face was always drawn so jankily by this author. I was like, your eyes are like way too far apart. What's happening with your forehead? Like, that's not it.
Right.
You hotter than that, you know, like it's okay. The art is a little janky is what I'm saying. I honestly don't remember Toji and Hikari from the anime, but I do assume that they are much cuter and happier here. So I'm happy for them.
Yes. They are a couple in, you know what? It's been a while. I should have done a rewatch like before I came on here. They are. It's either like heavily implied they're into each other or they're actually into each other. I do not remember, but I've always liked the pairing because Toji's like he's the big tough guy, but also he's a complete softie when it comes to like his sister. Who gets injured in one of in the first Eva angel attack against Sachiel, the third angel in the first episode, second episode, blah, blah, blah. And he's very protective of his sister, and it shows this softer side. And when like Toji gets chosen to be the pilot of Eva Unit, I want to say 5. So wait. 0 is Rei, 1 is Shinji, 2 Ava Unit 3, because 4 vaporizes in the United States nerve branch. Thanks. So Ava Unit 3,
Kensuke, piloting it or whatever.
Well, Kensuke wanted to pilot it, and he was so bummed, and then was probably grateful he did not get chosen. But like, there's this like, you don't get to see much about Toji being an Eva pilot, but you can tell there are definitely scenes where he seems really impacted by the fact that he was chosen and that his life is changing. I get the sense, again, I do not remember whether this is explicitly stated in the anime. Toji always felt like to me he came from a broken home and needs to be the person, he needs to be like, for lack of a better phrase, the man of the house. And then he realizes that forces against, beyond his control are taking him away from the duty he actually wants to do. And you can see how much it really impacts him.
Yeah, he's a big softie. And I did really like, the slice of life chapter that we got of them in volume 6.
Yeah. I loved that. I really did. That was one of my favorite sequences, especially in that album, in that volume. Can you tell I'm the musician?
Too hardcore.
The whole like, I'm going to record a video of myself was like, what year are we in?
I know. I was like, wow, the 90s were a different time.
It's funny because the anime itself takes place in 2014, but
they said it was 2015 in this.
Yeah, because I think that scene takes place like a year or two after they got dispersed throughout the world. And I've always found it really funny. One of my favorite Western franchises is BattleTech. For video game nerds out there, if you've ever played the Mech Warrior series of video games, it's the same universe. And it's the American version of Big Stompy Robots. And what I love about it is that it takes place in the main games take place in the 3000s. But the franchise started in the 80s, so it is very much the future according to the 1980s. And I appreciate that, you know, the game is still the franchise still is being developed today, and they've just kept that. And it's great,
like,
and I love it. So I like that same thing was like this adaptation was written in the early 2000s, so it's very much the future according to the early 2000s, where VHS was still a thing. So, you know, people was like, I need the video camera. Okay, well, we're out of tapes. It's just
I was like, wow.
Age check. There we go.
I know. I was like, I feel ancient. I've turned to dust. Okay. I did really like, overall, I like the motif throughout this manga of their use of like photography, because again, they had to be very purposeful about photography or letter writing, or, you know, this wild tape recording at the very end here, serving sort of the same purpose, where, you know, again, it comes back to that like theme of them trying to find this like stasis point, right? Like they all wish they could like freeze this moment in time, so they take a picture or whatever. But then I loved that in rendering the pictures, you know, later on, like the manga artist shows how it's like, well, in this one, Kaoru's in it, but they don't remember who Kaoru is anymore. Or like,
yeah, I like how in that scene specifically, like Shinji sees Kaoru, but then Kaoru disappears from it. Like, it's not just like, huh, that's weird, there's a gap there.
That's the
it's
scene
just
that
like,
reminded me of your name. I was like, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, that sense of like, he doesn't remember who Kaoru is, but he was like, but I feel so sad about it, and starts crying. I was like, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just like that overall. It's like, then, you know, we get these photos that the manga artist has to redraw each time, and you get like a zoom in or out on certain characters, or like Ritsuko covering up Yui because she's jealous and all these things. And I was like, see, this is great. This is a great example of how even in the moment where you take the picture, like it can be reused in many different contexts, and you're like re-remembering things, and there's no such thing as stasis for humans. We don't have that.
Nope.
But before we get to all those adult characters, we do have to bring up that Kensuke was here.
Yeah, he certainly was. I don't know why. I don't know why he's here. And that was really frustrating because like he had some really solid scenes with Shinji and with Toji in the anime. And here he was just like another person to pine for Asuka and make her realize she wanted Shinji. But like she didn't need that help from Kensuke.
No.
She never showed any interest in Kensuke. I just felt like it was such a waste. Like, why are you here?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I just think that Kensuke's confession scene, like the way that it was laid out and the emotional weight that he's having in it, was actually, I was like, that's some real good shoujo stuff, you know?
I don't disagree with you there. I think that that scene was well written, but I'm just like, there's no context to it. It's just like, oh, I need to love someone. Oh, Asuka, I love you. I'm like, oh, okay, here we are.
Yeah, I was like, is it because we all have to believe that Asuka, despite being mean to everyone, would be desirable? Like, you know? I don't know. They were like, Kensuke was in the original, we have to give him a role.
I feel like it's like, well, you've got Toji, you have to have Kensuke there. And it's like, okay, we'll make him Toji's friend who just shows up from time to I don't know.
You're like he doesn't need to let like Asuka and be slapped by him and stuff. Man, I really am Asuka. It's bad.
Oh my goodness.
Joshua knows too much about me, so he's like, that's correct. That's correct. Okay. So yeah, I want to talk about like Shinji's parents last, because they have their own whole like volume, and they exist in both stories. But yeah, so like talk about the other adults that exist first. So Misato is there being her drunk self, I guess. I don't know.
She's Misato. Yep. I think, and this is true of a lot of the adults who are not Shinji's parents, is they're there. And they don't really get much characterization until the little vignettes in the last volume, which I think is where Misato shines there at the end, because I almost feel like that was written for people our age, where it's just like, hey, people drift apart and then they come back together. I've seen it happen. You know, that has happened to somebody very, very close to me, where they went their own separate way, and then 50 years later they find each other again, and now they're married. So, you know, like I was just like, oh, this is kind of neat. I feel like this was written for the adults who are going to read this manga many, many years after it's written.
Yep. No, I did find that a good soft story about just like, why did we break up? Why did we do things? And you just like can't remember, you know, like can't remember all the sequence of events. I felt like that was the one point in the story where I was like, okay, this is a story about kind of like the value of forgetting / moving on and finding stasis, right? So I was like, but the way that they forget is kind of always artificially constructed by Kaoru and the angels and everything. So I felt like that story was one of the few instances where it was like, oh, this shows that there's some value in forgetting, and that it doesn't have to be the end in a non like artificial way.
Oh, hey, I guess we were dating.
Yeah,
like,
I guess.
We were dating? What? Yeah, I guess so. Why did we break up? I don't know. And then being like, I guess we never did.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It's like we were just really clingy with each other, but we never defined that, you know?
Right. Which can be something that younger people go through, especially if it's like your first relationship. You're like, here are all these novel feelings that I'm experiencing, and I don't know what they are, but I like them and don't want them to go away. And then maybe you find out said person maybe wasn't the best person for you in that context. But then as you get older, maybe you, as everybody like grows up and matures, you know, you have that rejoining of like, oh, we can take our own shared experiences now and see a future forward. Like stranger things have happened. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What you just said, the silly part that it reminded me of was I almost texted you or messaged you when I got to that line that Asuka says where she was like, these are the feelings, these feelings of love are the only ones that we'll experience when we're 14 or something. You know, she had like a corny line in volume 2 about them being 14. And I was like, they're 14. Like, it's killing me. What are we doing? What am I doing? What am I making you read? What are we reading? Like,
Speaking of what did you just ask me to read? Shall we talk about Ritsuko?
Ritsuko comes in and is like, hi, Shinji, come to the nurse's office. Shinji, why? Don't, for some nerve stuff, just come here, Shinji. Shinji, okay. Ritsuko, do you know that I love your dad? Are you surprised? Shinji, what? End scene. Like, not brought up again.
Honestly. Yeah, that was the one part where I was like, what, in my notes, I'm like, what the is this soap opera I'm reading? What did you make me read? I get that this is like mirror universe Evangelion, but why is Ritsuko being just like, sup, Shinji, I love your dad?
She should have been fired immediately.
That was the first time where I'm like, is this setting a tone for the rest of the manga? And the answer is no, not really. Okay, but it's like, okay, so why is this here?
The first volume was very rough tone-wise overall.
Yes. And like I said earlier, I think it smoothed out. It stuck a landing.
Yeah.
But boy, was that such a... And honestly, one of the things I did enjoy about reading the authors afterwards is he talks about how like just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it'll stick.
He was like, I didn't know where I was going, and then in a burst of a dream I woke up and knew. And I was like, okay, cool. But like, yeah, tonally overall, the first volume was really weird. Like it had this very large sense of foreboding, which makes sense for Ava, but it's not where it inevitably wound up. Like it was like, actually, we are trying to be softer. And I was like, but what about what Ritsuko said? Are we like, we do come back to that in her chapter, but it's not with Shinji, it's with Rei. No. And so it's like, okay. I don't know that we closed that loop fully, but sure. And it doesn't explain why she likes him at all. Like, he's hot. He's not hot. Can we agree?
Well, so I know that is a holdover from the original anime.
Okay.
It was both Ritsuko's mother, who was a scientist at Nerve, and eventually her personality was used as part of the Magi supercomputer trio. I want to say it was Casper. There are three of the Magi computers. It's of course, because they used Christian iconography and mythology much the same way that any Western show written by white people uses.
So like
Eastern
Japanese
mythology.
Words are cool, exactly.
Yeah, they were named after the three wise men, Balthazar, Melchior, and Casper. I believe it's the three wise men. Regardless,
you're Jewish,
Christian stuff. Yeah, I know. So yeah, it was Casper, and then Ritsuko, and she was in a relationship with Gendo, and I believe Ritsuko was as well after her mother's death.
Okay.
It was messy.
Yeah.
like many things in Evangelion, it was very, very messy.
Yeah.
But it made a lot more sense in that context than it did
because
here.
Shinji
This one was just
mom
like,
was dead in anime. Yeah.
But even like, just like, and this is, where I guess we'll also transition to like Gendo and Yui, where it's like, I wish there was more. I wish there was more than one volume explaining Gendo, because kind of like Asuka, I don't understand why Yui is like, oh, I like this person. I don't understand why Shinji is like, oh, I like Asuka.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why Yui is, oh, I like Gendo. I like the attempt at the backstory for Gendo. I think, he's a troubled teen from a broken home. Honestly, Gendo reminds me of an angrier version of the original Shinji Ikari, being abandoned by his parents, having lost one parent and the other abandoning him.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think it was divorce as opposed to his father dying, like Yui died in the original show, and how that can impact. I am the child of divorced parents, and I am very familiar with the ways, even when in my case, like I don't have any problems with my stepdad, never held resentment against him. All of the pent up frustration and anger I had was directed at the situation at the time that caused me to take some of that out on him in a way that I did not realize that I was doing. Right. So all that little pulling behind the curtain of my life to the internet strangers listening to this is to say, I kind of understand Gendo, and I think anybody who comes from a divorced home will kind of get that. And, as situations go surrounding divorces, mine was best case scenario. My parents are still amicable. Amicable with each other. Yeah. And I never had this feeling of, oh, my parents are mad at me or something like that. Like, they were both very supportive of me, and they treated me and my sister, as they should, as like, they're still our kids. We still got to take care of them. And even then, it really hurt, that whole situation. And it was like one of those pent up things that did not really come to a head until many years later, because I didn't really understand the hurt that I was having until it exploded loudly at one point, years and years ago at this point. So I actually liked the attempt at the backstory, and showing Gendo as troubled and broken and angry at everything. I just think I wanted more. Like I said, I've said a couple times already, this is my problem with this manga and with more modern styles of storytelling. They have too many ideas and not enough runtime. I think if we got like 2 volumes of Gendo and Yui, it would have fleshed it out more. Yeah, that's my Gendo feeling.
I can agree with that. And especially since we finished the 4 volumes and we're like, okay, it finished the story of the main cast. So then it starts this Gendo story. And I guess I had expectations at the beginning of the volume that both of the remaining volumes would be about their parents. But then, we get to the end of this volume and it's like, oh, okay, what's the 6th volume?
It's where are they now? Except in between parts of the story.
I was like, okay. But yeah, I also really liked the attempt at a backstory for Gendo and Yui, especially since within the main story, they still suck, right? Our perception of them is still that they suck and are ignoring Shinji and everything.
Well, oh yeah. Sorry, that's what you meant. I was like, well, in the original story, Yui's dead, but you meant the main story of Angelic Days. Yeah. Yeah, I think the anger of Shinji's anger is more directed at Gendo, because
Yui
Shinji does not
pay attention to him.
Yeah, well, she doesn't, and he doesn't like how his father treats his mother, but also we don't get a whole lot of it, which I also think might be a clever way of showing how kids don't always see the full picture.
Yeah.
So maybe a little covert theming there of parents don't always see the full picture of their kids' lives, and kids don't always see the full picture of their parents' lives. I'm realizing I'm about 4 years away from being as old as my dad was when I was born, and that's
you're having feelings.
Again, we get to define what adulthood is, I guess.
Yeah.
But boy, do I not feel like that. But also just being I wouldn't have seen this aspect of my dad's life, when, who knows what, I don't know what was going through his mind then. Maybe I actually end up feeling a lot like he did back then. Maybe growing up maybe we just grow old and we never really grow up. That's kind of how I approach it.
Fair enough. I do love that sentiment. And I don't know. My parents have only more recently separated, so but I still understood Gendo's anger. I was I remember being this angry about everyone and everything in high school, and I'm I don't exactly know why, but I listened to a lot of Linkin Park and was just mad at everything,
Yeah.
I don't know why though. I have some ideas about why, but whatever. So I was I understand Gendo. I think Gendo is more understandable than Yui in this case, because there's not a lot of why. You get some glimpses into Yui's home life that aren't great because her mom is so stringent, right? Yeah. And so you can kind of see the seed of her wanting to go for the bad boy and break rules and believe in his inherent goodness still, even if he's not doing good things. There's some logic there, but it does feel like this story, even more than the main part of Angelic Days, runs on a lot of vibes, right?
Yui was just I'm just going to let you verbally abuse me until I break you. I'm that's not healthy.
Yeah. I'm going to keep standing here and show you that I love you until you understand. And it worked. And I was okay.
All right. Okay.
Are you happy now? I also, I'm. How young were they when they had Shinji? They had to be so young, 19.
Yeah, boy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, because it was I don't know. She said one of them said something about how can I show that I love him so much or whatever, and then the next page was the time skip and her being pregnant and everything, and I was and doing chores that she didn't have the strength to do. I was
right.
Show her that you love her by making her preggers and not helping with chores.
Oh my gosh.
Very man of you.
Yeah. Maybe Shinji has a point.
Maybe Shinji has a point. Okay. Yeah, so I'm actually like, what makes me mad about their story is that I liked it a lot, and I don't want to like it a lot because they're bad. You know?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Like,
Yeah.
I see the seed of like an actually good story there, and they just don't run with it. They're just like, Gendo is bad and Yui gets walked over like a carpet, and now Kith.
Yeah, and it's like an end scene, no connection to how they got even worse in the future, you know? I'm like, I don't know,
Right.
man. I can't deal with this, you know?
No.
Okay, well, the only other character that existed was Kaji, but he was there.
Yeah, I'll a little inside baseball here is that neither you or I wrote anything under Kaji. He's just there. I think
He's
Kaji really serves to be the other end of Misato's story arc, and the only thing of value he really had, other than he was a bit of a spook in the original show. Like, he's the one who uncovers that the so-called Marduk Institute, which is the body designed for selecting Ava pilots, is really just a bunch of shell companies. And
capitalism.
It's more capitalism, obfuscation. And he finds out that all of Shinji's classmates are potential Evangelion pilots. So they have a little bit of that in there with Kaji trying to figure out who Kaoru is, but that's it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that, what they discover about Kaoru, but it didn't have to be Kaji who did that. It literally could have been anybody else.
Yeah. It's also just like, it didn't have to be him. It just had to come out that Kaoru had been also in Gendo and Yui's class, and they had forgotten him because, Gendo had wished for, he was like, I hate this world. I wish everybody and everything would go away. And Kaoru started to implement that, and then Yui brought them all back from the brink, and he's like, okay, you want to do this? Here's the future that is promised you and whatever. So like, it didn't. Kaji was just there. Yeah, he's a guy.
Yeah.
Also, I think we've brought up most of these themes throughout our discussion of characters, but is there any one of them that you wanted to bring up? You want to discuss more?
The regretting I should have said something more than I shouldn't have said something. And sort of along with that, being able to stay close to the person who says no. Again, there's someone who I will not name, who is out there who may listen to this in the future. Hi, who was the person who said no. And we are still very, very close friends today. One of my best friends, and someone who we really understand each other. And I would use the word love, but it is one of those things that and I think Ray brings this up in her little short story, that Ray or Ritsuko bring it up in that short story, where love means a lot of different things. And one of the things that this line that Ray says, where, regretting I should have said something more than I shouldn't, or you know what I mean? Maybe it's the opposite. I suck. But, I definitely in the case, in my situation, I would have regretted not ever saying anything. And I finally did get to say it. And the answer ended up being no. And we both stayed close and ended up where we're supposed to be, with the people who would, who compliment us very well.
Yes, I ship Josh with his current partner. They are very cute.
My wife. But yes, that whole sequence, like the things I do love about Angelic Days are the things that I go, oh, me. I have been precisely in this situation. And that theme was just like really heavy for me, because like I said, I've been there. And I think the lesson of, regretting more that you shouldn't have said something versus you should have said something. It's there's this weight off your shoulders thing of like, I said the thing that has been weighing me down for so long, that in and of itself is a release, and I don't have to wonder what the answer would be, with the added bonus of your connection with this other person is strong enough to withstand the no.
Yeah.
Maybe a little awkward for a little bit afterwards, but then like you grow up, and that is that. I think that's an important lesson that you know, I've always heard people say the worst thing someone can say is no.
Yeah.
And in this kind of like this situation, it's like you're always afraid, you know, in the way I approach relationships, the way I've always approached relationships is I want to be somebody's best friend first. Like, you know, I want my partner to be my best friend. Ergo, I have to be friends with the person before I even consider anything else. And the idea that someone can say no and then it gets awkward, am I going to ruin that friendship? And you are so sure that you will, and then you don't. I mean, even my first girlfriend, who we were together for 1.5 years, we were best friends before that ended up happening. We broke up for all of the right reasons. And then it was really hard to stay friends afterwards, but we did it. And she is also one of my best friends today. Man, yeah, no, that theme, I think was the one that really hit me the hardest.
I think it makes a lot of sense to me too, because, you know, I guess with Asher, I was so scared he would say no because we were best friends and I'd had a crush on him for 3 years because I'm dumb or whatever, you know, but like, yeah, so I was scared he would say no, but one of the things that convinced me to be like, you have to say it though, is that I was like, I'm pretty sure even if he does say no, you know, we could still be friends, so it's fine. Like,
it all works out. I don't necessarily believe in, no, let me rephrase that. I do not believe in things like fate, but my grandmother on my mom's side would always say, you know, it'll all work out in the end. And that's a mentality in my head that has carried me through a lot of difficult times and awkward times, is like, it'll all work out in the end. So I think that's
what gets
the closest
me through
thing
work.
Honestly, that gets me through fixing another dozen batches of Chromebooks. Like, okay, it'll all be worth it.
It's just anytime anybody has a meltdown at work, I'm like, it's okay, it will get fixed, and it doesn't matter, you know. It'll work out. Something will happen. That's how. Yeah, and always regret the things that you did do rather than things you didn't do is usually how I try to operate too. Yeah. See, this manga is like pretty good, actually. Okay. So
yeah, maybe I'm warming up to it the more I talk about it.
Maybe I'll ruin it for you right now with our regular closing segment, which is shipping corner.
Here we go.
Here we go. So this is where we talk about how we feel about the actual ships in the show or manga, anybody that we think should have been a ship. So Kaji and Misato, they were a thing. We kind of like them, I think, based on what we said earlier. You know,
they were a much more complicated thing in the original anime, and in this, like I say, I kind of like that this is the story of two people who grew apart and then found each other later, having peripheral experience with that through some other people in my life. That's something I can relate to.
Yeah, I really liked at the end too when Misato's like, "Let me guess, you're smiling on the other side of this phone and stuff, right?"
That was like, really cute. That's cute. That was really cute.
Cute, and goes back to like, I guess this was another theme that I really liked. I guess I should have brought it up before. Doesn't matter. Like, you know, they keep. I think part of the manga, it uses these rote phrases that we throw around, like, oh, Kaji never changes, or Shinji never changes, right? And really tries to make you think about what that actually means. So I was like, it is cute that, you know, there are some things that don't necessarily change. Like, there is some essence of you that is always you, but like that you are always put into a world that is changing, and fundamentally something has to change about you as well, even if you hold on to these like core mannerisms or like beliefs that are still you. Yeah. Which reminds me that in the Gendo and Yui story, the most powerful thing for me in that one was that Gendo was like, oh, this isn't like a light, it's a darkness, and you can't change it, you can only eliminate it. And I was like, whoo. Chills. Okay. Yes.
Who do you think Gendo's favorite emo band was?
Ooh, that's a fun game. I was like, I didn't even write Gendo and Yui on here, so we gotta talk about them. What is Gendo's favorite emo band? Oh my god. You and I should be good at this. We listen to so many.
I think he'd be into Linkin Park.
I was like, Linkin Park is a strong contender.
I think it would be Linkin Park. Do they classify as emo? I don't know how any of this works. I went to school for like classical music.
You're like, I went to school for classical.
Like just to be clear, my degree is in music education. I was going to be a choir teacher. Don't think I know like pop culture music all that well.
Didn't you also listen? You like some emo bands though. I guess not as much as other people from high school and me. Like I was all listening to like Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco.
Oh, it's the sort of thing that I would. Oh, Yellow Card was good. I did like Yellow Card.
It's too pop. It's Gendo would never like that. It's too happy.
No, too mainstream. Yeah. Hawthorne Heights. There you go.
Yes. See, like you were deep in it there.
Yeah, I know a couple things.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I accept that ship because it's canon. And I do like the fact that you get to see Yui and she's not dead.
She's not fridged. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's not stuck in an Evangelion. I like that.
Oh my god.
But yeah, it was just there. I wish I like the idea. I wish there was. I said it a million times already. I wish there was more, and there wasn't.
Yeah,
yep.
I think it needed the connective tissue of how we got from that story to the now.
Yeah, to
really make that work. Toji and Hikari, obviously.
My favorite plot line.
Very cute.
This was the one that I was the most invested in. There was no plot line. No, more my favorite ship. It was the one I was the most invested in, and it was the one that felt both the most realistic and the most positive. I really like them two together.
Yeah, they're gonna make beautiful babies. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
And then there's Asuka and Shinji, who definitely felt to me like, I don't know, everybody, like Asuka won some popularity poll properly somewhere along the line, and she was the only one like alive at the end of the anime. So guess we have to put her with Shinji. And I'm like, you didn't have to. This is AU,
I understand the feeling of being close enough to your best friend that you want to spend the rest of your life with them. That has been the story of every single relationship I've either been in or wanted to be in. But he should have gone with Rei. Asuka was super, super abusive. And it's like, yeah,
Rei.
No, it's just like really, really just... regardless of the reasoning, that's not a healthy friendship, and unhealthy friendships don't turn into healthy relationships, romantic relationships, as far as I'm concerned.
Can confirm via my own friendship into romantic relationship. It's awkward because Josh knows who I'm talking about.
Yep.
We all know. It's okay. See, Josh knows I hit people in high school, and that's not okay. It's not okay. That's what's... What we're saying is Shinji and Rei are healthier and better, and they should get together. Also, Shinji and Kaoru.
Yes, clearly.
The real ship here, yeah.
Yeah, the real one. I was always a Shinji. Like, Rei was of the anime waifus that every Evangelion every Evangelion fan needs to choose.
Yes, I was like, isn't this a big thing?
I was, yeah. I was always favorable to Rei.
Is that the underdog one? Because I really thought that everybody liked Asuka.
Don't know. Okay. That I don't know. I just know that Rei was always the one I liked better, the better of the two.
You liked Blue Oni? Okay.
Oh, yeah. But no, obviously Kaoru and Shinji. But I'll say it again. I said it before. I said it like 3 times already. I'll say it again. Toji and Hikari. They're the only ones that make sense. Maybe I'm taking this whole concept too seriously, but story of my life, I take everything too seriously.
OTP, Toji and Hikari. I also throw Asuka and Rei into the ring. Volume 1 is literally Asuka and Rei holding hands on the cover. So,
I was about to be like, I don't understand how you could put those two together, but like,
we ended with soft math teaching scene.
I could see that working out. I could see that working out in a weird kind of way of like, I don't know how these two creatures ended up with each other, but I'm happy for them.
We need an AU. We need an AU of the AU of the AU at this point. We need to go like 4 layers deep here. That's what's up. Let's just keep going. It's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I believe we've done it, unless you have any final thoughts you would like to say.
Just like, thanks for having me on. This was my first experience being on a podcast.
You're going to be a podcaster now.
Honored. I am honored that you thought to have me on here. I would be happy to come back if you want to throw any more weird shoujo manga at me. I'd come back. And I don't know absolutely everything about Evangelion, so if I got something wrong, please don't kill me, internet.
Yeah, don't kill us, okay? Don't kill me for saying it wrong. Don't kill Josh. Josh is a sweet boy. Don't at us like that, okay? I'll have to think of a way to spin doing Cyborg 009 on here just for kicks.
Oh, we have to do it. That's the April Fool's episode next year.
Yeah, next year. New shoujo manga, Cyborg 009.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, I'm glad you had fun.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, everybody. So thanks for listening to Shojo and Tell. Do you have comments, questions, constructive criticism, concerns, too many C's, need to gush about how much you do love Evangelion? Email shoujoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on the episode's YouTube page. We're at Shojo and Tell on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Tumblr. And technically still Twitter, but no. Joshua, where can people find you and or your work on the internet?
Basically nowhere, because social media is a poison that's killing us all. But that's a podcast episode in and of itself. That said, if you happen to be an a cappella fan or a music lover in general and want to listen to me do a cappella multi-track covers that get progressively better as time goes on, you can find my little hobby project page on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/J_M_P_H. That's really important because there are a number of JMPH pages. That one is mine. I'm sure it will be linked in the YouTube page if you are so inclined.
Like it will be linked in the show notes. Don't you worry.
In the show notes. Like I said, it's my hobby page. I upload it to it from time to time when I feel inspired. This ain't going to be a money-making endeavor for me. It's just something I love to do. My most recent cover, speaking of my favorite animes, is a cover of the theme song to Serial Experiments Lane that I mentioned before. The song itself is called Duvet by the British rock band Boa. It's by far the arrangement that I'm the most proud of right now, and I would be tickled pink if you'd give it a listen.
I love that you literally, what decade are we in, Joshua? You're like, is this where I plug my SoundCloud? And you're like, yeah, it is where I plug my SoundCloud.
So I'm on MySpace now.
I'm on MySpace. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love to see it. Definitely listen to Joshua's acapellas because they are very good. Joshua sends me good music sometimes, and I'm like, he has good taste, so that's right. Anyway, are you excited every time you see a new episode from us? If so, please consider leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts. This will help the podcast reach more hearts, or at least ears. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next time for, I'm going to say, I know I've said this before, but probably Hot Gimmick for real. For real this time. Finally going to cover one of my most loathed manga ever. I hope that's what we're going to cover anyway. I'll try to say at least one nice thing about it because this is a podcast where we don't yuck people's yums. This is a positive podcast, so I swear I'm going to try to be nice. Maybe I'll find 2 things nice about it. We'll see. Stay tuned. Until then, bye.
Peace.
Peace.